What's up, guys? I'm sure many of you guys are aware of the big hype double feature that's been going on this weekend that everyone's talking about. And fortunately, these happen to be two movies I was very interested in checking out. So of course I was going to join in on this double feature as well. So let's not waste too much time now and just get started with talking about these two movies. The first one I'm talking about is the newest film from Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer certainly has been on the docket for a lot of people as one of the biggest movies of the summer, including myself, as I've mentioned this before, but Christopher Nolan is definitely up there as one of my top favorite directors of all time. He's been a filmmaker who I've always admired the kind of movies he makes, and the talent he has to pull it off so well ever since seeing The Dark Knight a good 15 years ago. He has made some of the most original films in recent memory, and his dedication to creating an incredible cinematic experience is unmatched. There's a reason why he has such a big following, and while some may claim he's overrated, I think he definitely warrants most of the praise he gets. That's not to say that I think Nolan can do no wrong, as I was admittedly a little disappointed in his last film, Tenet. Not to say it's bad, but it felt lacking and tried a bit too hard to be the next big Christopher Nolan epic. After something like Tenet, I was hoping that Nolan would scale back a bit for his next film, and thankfully, it already was sounding from the looks of it with Oppenheimer. It's a biopic about one of the world's most notable man, being Robert J. Oppenheimer, known for creating the atom bomb. So it already sounded like a neat change of pace, and I was hoping this would end up being the right direction for Nolan to take for his filmography. So, does Oppenheimer live up to the legacy of Christopher Nolan? Well, not only is it more of what I was hoping for, with Nolan scaling things back a bit after so many blockbusters, but this is also an incredibly captivating character study that really goes interpersonal and complex about the changes people can make during a historical shift in society. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that Oppenheimer is a much better movie than Tenet. This is a very different kind of movie for Nolan, and one that I will admit, I'm not sure if everyone who's getting into the Barbie double feature with this film are expecting the movie they think it is. This is an action movie, as it's a pretty slow-paced drama with a few bits of spectacle here and there, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. That is mainly because, at its core, this is a very well done drama that still retains a lot of Nolan's craftsmanship as a director. Everything from the cinematography, score, set design are all incredible to witness firsthand, especially if you see this in IMAX on film. Yet more so than his other films, it's very dialogue focused, which could be uninteresting for some, yet the film is riveting in spite of this. It's mostly because we get one of the more complex character pieces I've seen in a Nolan movie, with the character of Oppenheimer himself being very fascinating. Cillian Murphy has always been a good partner to Nolan, playing various side characters, but this time he is a leading man, and he is excellent in this. The way Murphy pulls off a lot of the passion this person had is very endearing, but it gets even better when you see how he handles with all the weight this character has on his shoulder. You see firsthand how being the creator of something this destructive can actually damage a person in so many ways. And you see it through his perspective, as Nolan does a really great job getting you to understand his character. You're basically experiencing the situation with him. And of course, a lot of emotions are involved with this. He is a very captivating character in this, but the rest of his supporting cast is also excellent. This is a huge cast with actors like Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, Emily Blunt, and Matt Damon, to name a few, and they all give some really good performances. Some are only in it for a brief moment, but they still feel authentic to Oppenheimer's story, appearing during significant moments of his life. Robert Downey Jr. in particular is fantastic in this, already been proven to be a great actor, but seeing him in a Nolan film is an excellent way to follow up his exit to the MCU. Well, at least a significant improvement compared to his last follow-up, to say the least. Some are saying he could get nominated for an Oscar for this, and I believe him and Cillian Murphy are worthy of receiving that high recognition. In fact, I have a good feeling that this movie will get a big Oscar push from all the technical stuff like cinematography, score, and even makeup. I wanted to point out that some of the makeup to make certain characters look older as time goes on is pretty seamless. And this is Nolan, so there's no CGI involved, adding to the authenticity of the makeup here. Cementing this makeup nomination more so was the fact that there was also another actor who appears as a famous historical figure that was unrecognizable in the role. I won't say who it is, but I didn't find out it was them until someone told me after the movie. Either way, the Oscar game is strong for this one. However, if I had to pick one thing that might not have made me fall in love with this movie, is that this is a pretty slow movie, as I'm not sure if people are expecting it to be the movie they think it is, as Oppenheimer is not an action movie in the slightest, like I said. The most spectacle we see is in the middle of the film, and at its core, this is a serious drama. Granted, it's a very well-made drama done by one of the best directors working today, but it can be very slow. I don't want to say this movie is too long. Not just because I made a video discussing how I feel too many people are hung up on long movies nowadays, but also I feel most of the stuff included here felt necessary to the story. That being said, I admittedly felt the length more for this film than I did for Babylon or Beau is Afraid. I mostly felt it once we get to the third act of the film, which almost felt like it was fairly close to the end, but when I checked the time, there was still an hour left of the movie, and I was wondering what else are they going to do? Thankfully, the third act ends up being the best part of the film, as all the fears I had were laid to rest, especially with how Nolan handles the whole tragedy of the situation. Some might be a little skeptical of the portrayal of the events that unfold, as not to spoil too much, but I think most people who are at least a little bit familiar with World War II would know what the thing Oppenheimer created did for the world. It was something, of course, that caused a lot of destruction and needless violence. But the film doesn't celebrate this kind of victory. The film is actually very critical of what his creation caused, not only for the time period, but for the future in general. Like many of Nolan's best movies, it does leave you thinking, and some of it can be, albeit depressing, but it also makes you find the lead more interesting as we see him struggling with his actions. There's a moment in particular that addresses the guilt that Oppenheimer had in the third act that might be one of the best scenes I've ever seen in the Christopher Nolan movie. It's a sequence that is truly haunting in terms of what actually unfolded, and is one of the most bold scenes I've witnessed in any film discussing World War II. If you're feeling like this movie is going to glorify an awful event, don't worry. I think this movie does an excellent job showcasing that this whole situation is complicated for many involved, especially the lead, where some might think there should have been more perspective shown here. Given the movie is about Robert Oppenheimer, the person, I think the film needed to showcase exactly what they needed. Overall, I found Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer to be the perfect direction for Nolan to go. While it might not be my favorite movie of his, there is an immense amount of respect that I have for him, for what he was able to pull off here. I highly recommend seeing Oppenheimer, and it's definitely worth seeing in IMAX, especially for cinephiles and Nolan fans alike. Even if you were disappointed in some of Nolan's more recent work, like I have, just know that every once in a while, a great director can come back to remind you why someone like Christopher Nolan has the strong reputation he has gained. So take that for what it's worth. And I'm gonna give Oppenheimer a 9 out of 10. So now that we got the first part of our double feature out of the way, let's move on to the second part. The perfect movie to counteract the epic about the man who created the atomic bomb, the newest film from Greta Gerwig, Barbie. Admittedly a strange one that I didn't think would have gotten this kind of attention if you told me they were making a Barbie movie like a decade ago. Yet, this was another film that I ended up being really excited for, as much like Oppenheimer, there was another major idol of mine who is involved with this movie, and that is, of course, Margot Robbie. I think it might be apparent by now that with her track record of having so many recent favorite movies within the past couple of years, it is safe to say that she might be my absolute favorite actress. But my love of Margot Robbie wasn't the only thing that was making me intrigued by a Barbie movie, as this is actually the third film from talented filmmaker Greta Gerwig. She has proven herself with 2 already really great films on her docket, but having her next film be this big budget showcase that looks very stylistic and a lot of fun made me very eager to see what she would do. Plus, last but not least, it has my boys, Mr. Gosselin, and as a little bonus, even Michael Cera in the mix. So naturally, this movie certainly raised my eyebrows in terms of interest. So with all that said and done, did the Barbie movie manage to impress someone like myself? Well, here's the thing. I may not be a woman. Hell, I don't even have that much nostalgic attachment to the Barbie brand. However, after watching this movie, I have a feeling that me and Greta Gerwig somehow have a similar mindset. I mean, if I were to make a movie that challenges the patriarchy in a way that also discusses the human condition and how ever-changing ideas is the reason why certain ideas last forever, I too would also think Margot Robbie would be the perfect choice to lead a bold film like this. Barbie is not only a good time, but it's also a very unique kind of movie that is a strong meta commentary on the brand, but in the best way. They both poke fun and celebrate this character in a way that feels like a love letter, all through a film that does an amazing job showcasing Greta's talent as a director. This film is popping with so much color in every frame, particularly pink of course, but it makes for a refreshingly pretty movie. The sets, costume, and production design on all fronts is fantastic, making this world feel very bizarre yet also weirdly welcoming. In an age where we're starting to see more female representation behind the camera, seeing Greta Gerwig go full blast with her directing and being able to pull all of this off is fantastic to see after being used to seeing her do so many smaller films. Though that's not to say she doesn't retain her talent from her early days, as she's excellent with actors too. In the case of this film's lead, Margot Robbie is phenomenal as Barbie. Obviously, she looks the part. Well, I mean, how could she not? She's gorgeous. But they also dive more into her character, as the film focuses on Barbie going into the real world for a big self-discovery journey. Something we've seen before, and oftentimes the whole going into the real world concept for an outlandish character can be seen as a cheap move. Yet, the film makes it anything but cliche. This is a character that has been praised and critiqued for various reasons, and the film showcases all that kind of stuff. But what makes it work is that it does emphasize one of the main themes of Barbie, that Barbie has all these professions and different looks to her because she can be anything. And the movie definitely embraces a strong sense of individuality, and also trying to have that sense of identity in a world that might see you as lesser for whatever reason. The movie is unsurprisingly a very feminist film, but it does an excellent job showcasing that perspective of being a woman in a very clever way, thanks to a lot of really funny jokes and a decent amount of good character development between the leads. This doesn't just go for Margot Robbie, as Ryan Gosling is also here in this. I always love thinking about him being Ken, because I keep thinking that the execs at Warner Brothers were like, hey, Mr. Gosling, you want to play a role made iconic by Michael Keaton alongside Margot Robbie? And he responded with, fuck yeah, I get to be Batman with Harley Quinn, sign me the fuck up. All joking aside, Ryan Gosling kills it as Ken. As much like a lot of the best roles of his, he has a strong sense of charisma that managed to be endearing and funny. I swear, he's one of the main actors I can think of that can be loved by men and women alike for just how he's able to pull off being a badass and a heartthrob at the same time. It makes for a great actor, and plus, his name is Ryan. How can you go wrong with anyone who has a name as good as that? Not only do I think Gosling is good in this role, but I also found the character to be very well written, as Ken ends up having his own sort of self-discovery adventure. There's an element of the plot where he finds out more about the behavior of men in the real world, and the way they go into it, without revealing too much, is actually a good balance to Barbie's story. There are some people who are thinking that this movie is going to be another one of those anti-men movies, and while yes, it is coming from more of a female perspective, the film is actually more balanced about this message than one would think. This is because we see as the film goes on why Ken would end up acting like this, and his reasonings do come from an understandable place when you see how he is treated in Barbie Land. Yet the movie makes it a point about how one could feel if they're not being represented or noticed in a world that might view them as a subsidiary to the main power dynamic. It creates for a great leading pair that I'm so happy Greta Gerwig brought these two amazing leads as this iconic duo. Plus, she deserves all the credit for giving Mr. Gosling a really fun musical number, which I'm glad to see someone appreciate his work on La La Land. The rest of the cast is also really great, with a ton of characters either representing different aspects of Barbie or just being really strong supporting roles. America Ferrera is really solid as one of the main characters Barbie meets in the human world, and she even has a great monologue near the end about what makes being a woman so unique and great. There's also a few other actors appearing in this who give off a ton of energy for this bizarre world the film creates, from Seaman Lee, Issa Rae, and Michael Cera, all playing funny nods to other Barbie archetypes. In fact, this movie probably has a lot more of an edge than one might initially think when it comes to Barbie, with this being a fairly strong PG-13, but it maintains that great energy throughout. If I did have to point out a flaw with this movie, there are a few minor ones. As good as the jokes are, there are a few throwaway jokes in this movie that didn't quite do it for me. Not the most cringeworthy jokes in existence, but there was maybe a joke or two that didn't land for me as well as they wanted, with a few cheap cutaway gags here and there. Plus, Will Ferrell also appears in this movie, and while he certainly has fun with this role, it's also kind of him being Will Ferrell, and his whole role in the film feels slightly tacked on. It does add to this film's meta commentary, and I do appreciate how Mattel is able to have this movie poke fun at them, but the way it ties into Barbie's story isn't as natural as I would hope, as her character and Ferrell's team don't interact or contribute to the film as much as you would expect. In fact, sometimes they appear so inconsistently that I almost forgot they were even in the movie. Though those are the only real downsides to this movie, as the rest of the film is so clever, so delightful, while also being this humorous, more cynical take on this property, yet not cynical to a fault, as one of the best elements of this film is the ending, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Without saying too much, it does go into the theme of individuality and how we're able to go through life thanks to the ideas that last and are ever changing is honestly an amazing way for this movie to end, leading to a very positive message at the end of the day that feels like the exact kind of movie people need right now. So overall, the Barbie movie is a blast of a film that is not only an enjoyable time, not only is it another great work from Greta Gerwig's ever-growing film career, not only does it utilize Margot Robbie perfectly, but it just manages to be a very smart and unique movie. Its themes are bold and perfect for anyone who's struggling to find a sense of purpose, as this movie reminds you about what makes someone special. Thank you for such an incredible time, Greta Gerwig, as I definitely look forward to whatever unique project you will have in store for us next. Like I said, anyone who can utilize a talent as great as Margot Robbie in a film so uniquely ambitious and enjoyable as Barbie is a filmmaker worth having around. So take that for what it's worth. And I'm gonna give the Barbie movie a 9 out of 10. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Barbie and Oppenheimer. What did you guys think of both movies? If you happen to participate in the Barbenheimer double feature, or even if you didn't see them back to back, what did you think about these movies in general? Comment below, let me know. Hit that red subscribe button for more updates and videos, and I'll see you guys again in the near future. Later.
I'm Tour Guide Barbie. Please keep your hands, arms, and accessories inside the car and no flash photography. Thank you.
I'm a marriage butt.